Hi everyone, and thank you very much for joining me back. So after we talked about this panel, we move on to talk about the panel where all the tools we use in After Effects are located. This panel is called the Tools bar. Let's start with the first tool called Home. If I click on it, the panel that pops up every time we open the software will pop up. So like I said earlier, apart from the quick access to the latest projects and quick connection to our Adobe account, we don't have much use for this tool. Let's close this and move on to the next tool called Selection Tool. Keyboard shortcut is V. We use this tool all the time. With its help, we move things around and work on the project. I will press Ctrl Z. A nice thing to know about the selection tool is that different snipping options open up here when we use it. In general, After Effects has additional options for each tool, with the help of which you can make additional actions according to the tool we have chosen. So when I'm on the selection tool, the snipping options appear. Let's see how it works. When I moved the layer earlier, it moved freely according to my mouse movement. If I activate the snipping tool and now move the layer, you'll notice that nothing has happened yet. The change will happen when we create guides. So I will open the rollers and create 2 guides. Now I'll grab the layer from here, and when I move the layer to the area of the guide, the layer will snap to the position of the guides I created. So that the guides don't get in the way later, you can lock them through View, Lock Guides. For the perfect snapping, work with both of these options on. And now, I want to show you how to use snapping in combination with the grids we learned about in the previous lessons. But before that, I'll delete the guides and turn off the rollers. I'll select this grid. Turn on the background for a better look, and move the layer. As you can see, when I try to place the layer on the grid, the snapping doesn't work. For it to work, I need to go to View and click on Snap to Grid. Now if I move the layer, the snapping will work together with the grid. And that's how you can work precisely according to grids and guides. As we now see in the example, the snapping tool helps me a lot to place the objects next to each other. With the help of the position from which we grab the layer, we help After Effects understand which corners I'm trying to connect. To turn off the snapping, I can cancel both options or simply click on the general checkbox. Now let's restore the project to its previous state. Set the preview to fit. Cancel the grid. Select the layer, and with the help of the Align tool, we will place it in the center. We will talk about this tool later. The next tool is the Hand tool. The shortcut for this tool is the H key, or by the middle click on the mouse. Now we can move the preview screen area. It can be handy while working in Zoom. If you use this tool via the H key, it is important to remember to return to the Selection tool. That's why I prefer to use this tool via the middle click on the mouse or with the help of the spacebar, as we did in the lesson about the preview panel. I can move around by moving the area while holding the spacebar. It is important not to get confused between Hand and Selection tools. The Selection tool allows us to move the layer itself, and the Hand tool moves the area. Before I continue, let's restore the project to the previous state using Ctrl Z. And now, let's talk about the zoom tool. The shortcut is the Z key. This tool works in a very simple way. And it is useful for us if we want to get closer to a specific area. I can select this part if I want to zoom on it. If I press Alt, then my mouse changes to minus. This means if I click here, I will zoom out. Honestly, I never got to use this tool. I always zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. We will talk about these three tools later, when we talk about 3D in After Effects. As you can see in the example, we will deal with this when we create the text animation. The next tool is the rotation tool. Just select it, and then grab the layer and rotate it. I never got to use this tool either. Now let's talk about one of the most important tools in After Effects. Anchor point. We use it a lot, and it has a significant impact on how the animation looks. As you noticed earlier, when I rotated my layer with the rotation tool, it rotates symmetrically from the center of the layer. It's because the anchor point of this layer is in the center of this layer. The anchor point determines how the layer will react to a certain action. In this case, the action of rotation. Let's see what happens if I move the anchor point to this place. And now I rotate the layer with the rotation tool as before. Look how the layer rotates now. Let's move the anchor point here, and rotate the layer again. Now the layer rotates like this. I press Ctrl Z a few times. It often happens when we finish working with anchor point and then want to continue working on the project. We are unable to move anything. This is because we are still using the anchor point tool. This is a common mistake that happens to beginners. So remember that after you finish with the anchor point, press V to return to the selection tool. Another nice thing to know about the anchor point is how to attach the anchor point to the edges of the layer. Do it together with me and get used to it. Select the layer's anchor point with the anchor point tool and move the layer's anchor point while holding the Control key. And now, I want to teach you a very useful shortcut that will center the anchor point without moving it manually. The shortcut is Ctrl-Alt-Home. So we learned how to move the anchor point with the Control key and to center the anchor point in the center of the layer with a super handy shortcut. But what should I do when I have many layers and want to change the position of their anchor points? As you can see in the example from one of my courses, to center all anchor points of all layers is easy. We can do it by the shortcut. But what should I do if I want to place the anchor points of all layers on one of the sides? In that case, we will use a free and very useful script called Reposition Anchor Point. First, I will show you how it works, and then we will download and install it together. So I'll open the script and show you how it works. I'll zoom out a bit. So first, we need to choose which corner to place the anchor point and then just click on Reposition. I can choose this corner as well. If I want to place them in the center, I will select the center and press Reposition. And now, let's see how to download and install the script, both for Windows and Mac users. First, we need to save the project and close it. Now go to the AE Scripts website. You can find the link in the description of the video or the folder of the course. Now you need to register to the site. I already have a user, so I'll log in. Now search the script, click on it, and enter your price. you can write 0 or leave a tip to the creators of the script. After that, click on Add to Cart. Then go to the shopping basket up here. In the shopping basket, you can see the product. Click on Proceed to Checkpoint. You can press Continue until you reach the third part, where you click on Place Order. Now go to My Download and License and download the script. Choose a convenient folder for you, and extract the WINR or zip file after downloading. After the extraction, you can delete the WINR or the zip file. Now go into the folder until you see the JSX file. You need to copy the JSX file and paste it into After Effects folder. First of all, you need to know where your software is installed. For Windows users, you can find it in the C drive, Program Files, Adobe, After Effects. On my computer, I decided to install all the Adobe files on the D drive. This is why I don't see the Adobe programs here. So I go to my D drive and open the folder from there. Now enter the folder Support Files, Scripts, Script UI Panels, and paste the JSX file here. I already have the script, so that I won't paste it again. And for Mac users, open Finder, go to Applications, Adobe, After Effects, Scripts, Script UI Panels, and paste the JSX file here. And now, go to the folder you created for the course and open the After Effects file you created, called Class 0. Go to Window, and if you scroll down, you will see the new script installed. You can scale up this panel or drag it to the overflow menu. To unlock the panel, open the little menu and click on Unlock Panel. Let's close it for now. Excellent! So after installing our first script, we can move on to the next tool, the Shape tool. Right now, we see the name, Rectangle tool, because now I have chosen to create a rectangle. So I'll select the Shape tool, and try to create a shape with my layer selected. But instead, a mask was created, which is not what I wanted. I'll press Ctrl Z and explain why it happened. The Shape tool works in the following way. If I want to create a shape, I have to make sure that no layer is selected. When I use the Shape tool, and one of the layers is selected, look how my mouse cursor looks. It's an icon that shows that a mask will now be created. And if I unselect the layer, I'll see that the mouse cursor has changed to a star icon, which means I can now create a shape. So let's do it. I'll see that additional options that come with the Shape tool open up. If I click on Fill, I can choose to have the shape with or without a fill, or maybe a different gradient type. In our case, I'll choose the normal filling, then click OK. And move on to the stroke. Here I'll choose the stroke to be a solid fill color. I can go in and choose the color of the stroke and the fill. Here I can choose the thickness of the stroke. I can write down a specific number or drag it to the sides. I will write 5 and press Enter. Again, I ensure I haven't selected any layers and proceed to create a shape. If I press Shift while creating the shape, then the shape will be symmetrical. Now I will release the click and then release the Shift key. Notice that the shape's anchor point is in its center. For those whose anchor point is not in the center, you probably didn't see the first lessons where I asked to set the preferences exactly like mine. So go to Preferences and under the General category, make sure to check this checkbox. Now, whenever we create a shape, the anchor point will be in the center of it. Okay, let's continue. Let's see what happens if I want to create another shape. So I create another square and notice what happens. The new square was created on the same layer as the first square. I can see the two squares here in the layer, under Contents. I will delete it and explain why it happened. This happened because I created the new square when that layer was selected. If you want to create a shape in a separate layer, make sure that no layer is selected. That way, the new shape will be created on a new layer. There is a lot to learn about shape layers and we will go over all that later. For now I want you to understand the basics of this tool. I will delete it now, so after we've created a shape, we can change the design anytime. Now I want to talk about how to create masks for our shapes. As you can see, my mouse cursor shows that if I create a shape, a new shape will be created. But I want to make a mask for this shape rather than drawing another shape. And as you remember, earlier we created a mask using the Shape tool. The video layer was selected, the Shape tool was selected. Therefore, the mouse cursor showed me that a mask would be created. So creating a mask on a video layer is easy. But how can I create a mask for a shape layer? For example, I have created a shape, selected the Shape tool, and will try to make a mask. But no mask is created. I just got another shape. I'll press Ctrl Z. And now I'll show you how to do it. All we need to do is to change between those icons. When I'm using a Shape tool, and this icon is checked, it means that the Shape tool will create another shape. But if I check this icon, the Shape tool will now create a mask. As you can see, the mouse cursor has changed. And now, I can create a mask for the shape. I'll press Ctrl Z. And if I do want to create a shape, I'll select this icon. If I want a mask, then I will select this one. I'll press Ctrl Z a few times. Now I'll explain why I kept calling this tool the Shape tool when the name we see here is the Rectangle tool. Do you see that there is a tiny arrow here? If we hold and release it, we will get more options for this tool. Until now, the shape I used was a rectangle, that's why we saw that name here. So within Shape tool, I can choose to create other shapes, like an ellipse for example. I'll select it, and now I'll create a sphere. But before that, I have a question. According to the icon of my mouse cursor, and according to the fact that this layer is selected, and here I have this icon selected, what will be created now, a shape or a mask? So, of course, a shape will be created, because by selecting this icon, I'm creating a shape. This is why the mouse cursor is with the star icon. If I want to make a mask, then I will click here, and then I can create a mask in the shape of a circle. I'll press Ctrl Z. If I want to create a sphere and not inside this layer, I'll make sure I don't have any layers selected, and then I can create the sphere. And so my sphere will be in a separate layer. If I were to create the circle with this layer selected, then the circle would be created within this layer. There is no right or wrong here, you just need to know that this is how the Shape tool works. It will help us avoid many misunderstandings in the future. Now let's do it together. I'll delete the shapes I created. Let's create a small sphere that we will animate later. So, go to the Shape tool, press and hold, release it, and select the ellipse. Let's turn off this layer and make sure we don't select it. Now we will change the color to black and choose that the sphere will be without a stroke. Now let's open the Safe Action grid using the apostrophe key. I'm talking about this grid. Now we see the center of the frame. We can zoom a little bit, and now, let's create the sphere from the center, while holding Ctrl and Shift. In this way, we can create the shape from the center symmetrically. Now I will release the click, and then I will release the Shift and the Ctrl. At first, it will feel a bit complex to you, but over time you will get used to these actions. That's it, we're done talking about the Shape tool. Now let's close the parameters of this layer. Return the screen to fit, and turn off the grid by using the apostrophe key. And now we'll move on to the next tool, the pen tool. But before that, let's turn off the circle we created and turn the video layer back on. This tool works very similarly to the Shape tool. When the layer is selected, you will see the mouse cursor with an icon of the mask. If I create a shape, a mask will be created. I'll press Ctrl-Z a few times. And this time I will create a shape with no layer selected. As you can see, the icon of the mouse cursor is now in the shape of a star, which tells me that a shape will be created. So now I will draw a small collar for our leopard. And here, I see that a new layer has been created, which is actually another shaped layer. Let's turn off the video layer because we're not talking about masks right now. And let's learn what we can do with the shape we created. As you can see, this shape has several points that I can move. Every time I select a point, it is colored in blue, so I can tell which point is currently selected. If I want to select 2 points, then I have to select one, hold Shift, and select the other. Now I can leave the Shift and move both points together. I will also select this point with Shift and move the 3 points I choose. There is another way to select points. For example, I want to select these 2 points, so I can hold the Alt key. Now my mouse cursor is white, it tells me that I can mark several points, so I keep holding Alt and then select the area where the points are. I can hold Alt and select just that point, and so on. Without the Alt, it works like this. I'll click on the point I want to move, but it won't move on its own. I have to get here, select this and only then select the point. So instead of doing this whole process, I can hold Alt and select the points I want. A common mistake that happens is that you can accidentally click here on the side and create an unnecessary point. Use the backspace key to delete it. Another situation that can happen is when you select the layer and then try to move it with the selection tool. You will not be able to move the points that way. You can only move them when you go back to the pen tool. And now, the points are presented to us in a slightly different way. This is how the points look when I use the selection tool, and this is how it looks when I'm using the pen tool. If we want to create a new point, then we can simply stand here in the area of the path and click on it. If I want to delete a point, I have to select it and press the backspace key. Or stand on one of the points, hold Ctrl, so the pen tool changes to deleting mode, and click on it. I'll add one point here for now. Now let's learn how to fully open the shape we created. To understand it more clearly, I will paint the stroke of this shape in black and turn off the fill. Now I want to open it. If I delete one of the points, you'll notice that my shape is still closed. To open the shape, I need to select both points with Alt. Then right-click on one of them, go to Mask and Shape, Path, and choose Closed. Now the shape is fully opened. I want to talk about another reason why you should mark the points using the Alt key. Let's say, I want to mark the 2 points I have here. As you already know, we can select the points using Shift. Select one point and then select the other while holding the Shift key. This way I'll not be able to select the second point. Instead, I'll just close the shape, which is not what I wanted. I'll press Ctrl Z. So if I want to select that point without closing the shape, I'll hold the Alt key and select this point. Now let's close our shape in a simple way, which is simply to select the second point or select both points. Right-click on one of them and again select Closed. A small reminder, if I now want to select this point, then I will hold Alt and select this area where the point is located. Now let's create another shape using the Pen tool. Just like in Shape tool, if I want to create another shape when the layer is selected, then a new shape will be created inside this layer. If I want to create a shape in a separate layer, then I have to make sure that no layer is selected, and then create a shape. I'll delete the shapes I made. And now we'll talk about this option called Roto Bezier. If I'll select it and create a shape, the shape will be created with rounded corners. If I turn it off, and then the shape will be created with sharp corners. I will delete the shapes I created and teach you how to choose a specific point to be rounded. So I will create another shape that looks like a man's profile. And I want only this point to be rounded. I can go to the Pen tool, click and hold, and select the Convert Vertex tool. Now the mouse cursor looks different when I stand on one of the points. And if I click here, then the point will become rounded. And now I can move those handles and adjust them to any shape I want. What is important to know is that if you are using the Convert Vertex tool, you will not be able to move the point. In order to move it, you will have to return to the regular Pen tool and then move the point. Instead of doing this process, we can activate the Vertex tool by holding the Alt key. As you can see, I'm using the Pen tool, and now I'll hold the Alt key and click on the point. It will make the corner rounded, and then I can easily move the handles anywhere I want. I'll do the same with this point. I'll hold the Alt key and then click on the point. I can move both handles together. And if I want to move each handle separately, then I can hold the Alt key and move the handles separately. If I want these 2 points to move together again, I have to bring the point back to normal by holding the Alt key and clicking on the point once, and then once again. I can select a couple of points and convert them to be rounded. If I want to make all my points rounded, I have to double-click on one of the points. It will select all of them. Select the Pen tool. Press Enter. Now hold the Alt key and click on one of the points once, and then once again. The same process is to return everything to regular points. A common mistake that happens is that when we select all the points again, it automatically brings us to the Selection tool. If we try to change the points with the Alt key, it will not work. It doesn't work because we are on the Selection tool. In that case, you have to go back to Pen tool, and then the Alt will work. So now I'll delete the shape I made, and we'll continue learning about the Pen tool. This time let's talk about masks. I'll turn on the layer of the video. And as we learned before, when I select any layer and then try to create a shape, then a mask will be created. Here you can also see that the color and stroke options will disappear, because After Effects know that now a mask will be created. So I'll make a mask around the leopard's head. I'll get a little closer so we can see it better. With the help of a middle click on the mouse or holding the spacebar, I can place the preview screen where it is convenient for me. The mask works just like the shape we created with the pen tool. I can use Alt to make the corners rounded and adjust the handles that way. Play with it as much as possible at first and get used to these actions. Alright, let's continue to learn about the masks created by the pen tool. And this time we will talk about the feather tool mask. Because I already have a mask, I can use this tool to decide if there will be a feather for the mask. I can create another feather point here. And here create a smaller feather. In places where I have more fur, I would like to add more feather. You can change these points at any time later. You can also add a fader point from the inside of the mask. And with that, we finished talking about the pen tool. Let's return to the pen tool and delete the mask we created. I'll select the layer that has the mask on it, and then I will open the properties here and delete the mask that I created. Soon we will talk about all the properties of the layers and this whole panel. Meanwhile, let's set the preview screen to fit and continue to the next tool, the text tool. I will click on the text tool and turn off the layer. So as you can see, as soon as I clicked on the text tool, the character panel immediately opened in the overflow chat area. There are two important things to know about the text in After Effects. The first is when we click once, then a line of text will be created. But we can also create a text box. I will click here to make sure I'm not selecting any layer. And now I will click and drag. This way, a text box will be created. I'll delete these two text layers. When I create text, here I can choose the font size. Here I can activate a stroke for the text. Here I control the thickness of the stroke. I can bring back the color to the text. I can also have a color and the stroke together. Of course, there is a lot to learn about the text tools in After Effects. But it is impossible to teach everything at once. Because we'd be loaded with too much information and in the end, we don't remember anything. That's why I created a crazy course, where I go through all the options and animations that can be created with text and typography in After Effects. This can be a true heaven for graphic designers because I know how much you love typography. Okay, back to business. With this tool, we can create vertical text, and now if I write something, then the text will be written vertically. I can also create a vertical text box. I'll delete all the text layers I created and return to the normal text tool. A common mistake that can happen while working with the text tool in After Effects is when we finish writing the text and want to continue moving things in the composition, we will not able to do so. It happens because we forget to return to the selection tool. Only after selecting the selection tool, we can continue to move things around. To understand it a little better, I will turn on the sphere we created, and now I will continue to work on the text, and then I will try to move the sphere. I won't be able to do so. And if I press enter, I will drop a line in the text I created. I'll delete it. So you must be thinking, why don't I go back to Selection tool using the keyboard shortcut V? If I do that, then it will keep writing the letter V in the text line. So how can we get back to Selection tool in the right way? We need to press Ctrl Enter. This is basically how I close the activity of the text tool, and now I can press V to go back to the Selection tool. Let's practice it together. Let's create a text. We will not press Enter or V. We will press Ctrl Enter. But we are not done yet, because if we now want to move the sphere, we still can't do it because we're still on the text tool. That's why after you press Ctrl Enter, don't forget to press V to switch back to the Selection tool. That's how it works here. Let's delete the text, turn off this layer, and create the title we will animate later. Now let's select all text with the shortcut, Ctrl-A. Go to Paragraph, and center the text. Here we also have the option to change the writing direction. In Character, I will choose the font. You can find this font in the course folder. In the previous lessons, I explained how to install the fonts, both for Windows and Mac users. You can find the link for this video in the description. Let's adjust the leading. Note that the leading does not synchronize with the font size when we increase the font size. So for now, let's leave the leading as auto. Now, to place the text in the center, I can go to Align and click here and here. And now let's practice the options in the character panel so we can get used to it a little bit. Select only the first word by double-clicking on it, and increase this word a little bit. Now select the last word and decrease it a little bit. Now let's select all text with the shortcut, Ctrl-A, and adjust the leading. We can also adjust the leading separately for each word. Let's align it to the center again. Okay, after playing a bit with the options of the text, let's bring the title to its original state. We will set the leading to Auto and change the text size to 250. And now, using the Ctrl-Alt-Home shortcut, let's place the anchor point in the center of the layer. And place the text in the center of the composition, but not with the Align tool. This time we will do it using another super cool shortcut, which is Ctrl-Home. These two keyboard shortcuts work great together when working with text, because every time we change the text, then the anchor point and the position of the text change. Ctrl-Alt-Home is to center the anchor point, then Ctrl-Home, which is to center the layer in the composition. Let's practice this workflow together. Increase the text. Press Ctrl-Alt-Home and then Ctrl-Home. Okay, let's practice this one last time. We will increase the text to 300. Press Ctrl-Alt-Home and then Ctrl-Home. Now let's turn off the title and continue learning about the next tools. We will not use these three tools in the course because these tools are more for videographers. In this course, we focus more on motion design and not video editing. The last tool we will talk about is the Puppet tool. It's a bit complex tool, and we will be using it in this course, but I will show you a small example so that you understand the principle of this tool. Don't do this with me, just look. I will create a small square and demonstrate the Puppet tool on it. So I create a square and look what happens. My question to you is, Does anyone know what happened and why I couldn't create a square? Great job to those who answered correctly, and those who didn't understand, don't worry, you'll remember it now. I'll explain what happened. When I went to create the square using the rectangle tool, notice that the layer of the text was selected, which means that when I tried to create a shape, a mask was created on the layer that was selected. The sharp-eyed could also notice an icon on the mouse cursor, which showed me that I was about to create a mask. So now I make sure I don't select any layer, and now I can create the square. And now I'll select the puppet tool and create one point up here. When I click on the point and try to move it, nothing happens. Let's see what happens if I create another point here as well. Now if I move the first point, we can notice something happening. It moves in a slightly unusual way. And now let's see if I add another point down here. I'll select the top point and move it. As you see, now the square behaves and moves like a soft shape. But I recommend you not to use this tool a lot because it is a bit uncomfortable, especially while working with a bunch of points. And as we can see, it functions as an effect on the layer. We can also control this from the layer's properties. If I open the puppet tool from here, we'll see that there's a lot to mess with, so I won't go into the depth of this tool now. I'll delete this layer and bring back the project panel. Now I'll go back to Selection tool, and the last thing I want to mention is this area. We already talked about it at the beginning of the course. These are different options for arranging the panels. I will return to the default. And because I moved between different arrangements, the layers here were open for me. I will close them all, and with that, we will finish this lesson. I invite you to join the next class where we will start to learn about the most interesting panel in After Effects, the layer panel. But before that, I highly recommend taking a 10-minute break. Get up from your chair, do some light stretches, make some tea or coffee, and come back refreshed for the next part. See you in the next one.